Okay. All right. So, as I mentioned, I do have myself pinned. So even if any of you decide to share during, the presentation, if you have questions, anything like that, it should only record me. But if you'd like to turn your camera off for the sake of protecting your privacy, just in case, you're certainly welcome to. Um, I believe I know most of you, but just in case, or for anybody who may watch the replay, or the recording after the fact, my name is Courtney. I am the director of Tapestries, which is our memory support community here at United Methodist Communities at Pittman. I have I'm a social worker by background, and I have a lot of experience in senior care and mental health and brain injury, and just kind of all things related to the brain,
It's recorded.
that I'm really passionate about this, and why the education part of it is so important to me, because I feel like we don't get a lot of support through this journey with our loved ones. So today we're going to talk about dealing with loss, which is a big struggle I know many of you have experienced with your loved ones, regardless of what kind of loss it may be. So we're going to go through some of the major types that we see and some strategies for dealing with that. And then I'll also talk a little bit about just the process of loss from the perspective of caregivers as well, because I'm guessing all of you are here. I mean, many of you I know, but I'm guessing all of you are here because you care for someone with dementia. And so you're probably experiencing a fair amount of loss yourself in some respects. So we'll talk a little bit about all of that. I will not mute anybody, so that you can ask questions or participate in the conversation at any point. So I just ask that you be mindful of your mute button if you have, kids, dogs, general chaos like happens in my home going on in the background, anything like that. But all that said, we'll get started. So without a doubt, the probably single biggest thing that comes up for our loved ones with dementia is loss of a loved one. And one of the most frequent questions that I get asked is, especially with a recent loss, is, do I tell them? I think that's a struggle for a lot of people. We want to protect our loved ones from hurt, and especially when they're struggling with their memory and they may not remember and they may not understand. That's a big challenge. So we're going to talk both about recent and distant loss, but when we're thinking about whether or not we tell them, we want to consider their cognitive state. We want to consider their relationship with the person. So when I say consider their cognitive state, what I mean is, where are they in their journey? What's their memory like? What's their emotional state like? All of those things we're going to take into consideration when we make that decision whether or not we tell them someone has passed. If they are in the early stages and they've got a pretty good memory, we want to tell them. In that case, they're going to notice that person's absence. They're going to wonder why they haven't called, things of that nature. We definitely want to tell them. If they have if they're struggling with their emotional state, maybe they have difficulty with depression, maybe they have difficulty with anxiety, whatever the case may be, we might want to consider how and when we tell them. And we may want to set up supports for them prior to telling them. And supports could be any number of things. So it's going to depend on the person and their needs. So it might be that you plan some extra visits to be there with them. It might be that you work out a plan, if they're here in our community, you work out a plan with staff to make sure that we're giving them additional support, that we're giving them a little extra love and care, to make sure that they're okay in the time following receiving that news. That can escalate all the way up to having a one-on-one staff person with them all the time to make sure that they're safe while they mourn that loved one. That's particularly true if it was somebody very close, a spouse, a child, things like that, that tend to be like really earth-shattering losses for anybody, really. So we definitely want to consider where they are in their journey and how it's going to impact them and how likely they are to understand it and to remember it when we tell them. We also want to consider what they're saying. So often when they ask about someone who's recently passed, whether they already know or they don't, they might say, like, is Steve okay? Kind of a thing. And that's like a panic moment for a lot of families, like, oh my gosh, Steve passed away. I don't know how I should answer this. And so you might want to seek more information. Oh, why do you ask? And if they say, I've got a feeling something's wrong, or I've got this weird feeling, they're probably remembering some aspect about that person. They may or may not remember the specific details. At that time, go ahead and tell them, because they know something's up. They might be asking like, oh, how's he doing? At that point, you're going to make a judgment call as to where they are and whether they can handle that information. Regardless of what we decide to do, we want to make sure that we're communicating that decision with any significant friends or family members that have routine contact with them. So if you make a decision, I don't want to tell my loved one that I don't want to tell my mom that her brother has passed. That's fine. That's a perfectly acceptable decision to make, but you better make sure that your brother and sister are on the same page, because they might tell them. And then, that can create a whole nother world of problems if they are wondering why they're getting conflicting information, or just that getting conflicting information can be very confusing and upsetting for them. If it's a distant loss, we're going to still use some of those same strategies. We definitely want to consider what they're saying at those times. So often with distant losses, what we'll hear is that people are looking for that loved one. They don't remember who passed away. They're wondering why they haven't seen that person in a while. And so you'll hear them say, I'm looking for my mother. Have you seen her? Or, my husband is usually home by now. Where is he? Something to that effect. You want to use your empathy to try to figure out why might they be looking for that person. So what I always think of when someone's looking for, say, a parent, why do you want your mother? Think about you yourself as an individual. When are the times you really think, oh, I need my mom right now, or I need my dad right now? It's usually the times we feel scared, stressed, sick, uncomfortable in some way. Maybe we're hurting and that's the person we always went to for comfort. Maybe we're hungry and that's who fixed us a snack when we were kids, and that comfort is what we're looking for. So you can feel free to like kind of use that to your advantage. You might gloss over the loss entirely and say, like, oh, I haven't seen her. Can I get something for you? Can I do something for you? And try to get to whatever that root problem is. That's okay. You can encourage them to remember their loved one in a safe way. This is true whether they know the person is passed in that moment or not. Okay. So let's say they know their mom, their spouse, their sibling, whoever has passed, and they're saying, I really miss them. That's a great time to say, tell me a little bit about them, or a great time if you have memories with that person to say, I really miss them too. This is what I miss. and encourage reminiscing in that way. And it can really help kind of shape that conversation where it's still a sad topic, but we can turn it into a productive experience and a positive one for them because they're remembering and they're grieving in a healthy way. Again, in this situation, we definitely want to communicate what we're doing and what our decisions are with other people that are involved in their lives so that they're on the same page. And that might include if you hear your loved one asking those types of questions, giving family members a heads up. Hey, just so you know, sometimes they're looking for this person. And this is what I've said and done that's been helpful. This is what I've said and done that hasn't been helpful. Okay. Regardless of the type of loss, we want to follow their lead, and we might need to use context clues to do that. So if they're talking about the person from a place of, like, I just saw them, we can infer from that they don't know the person has passed. That's probably a time when we're going to want to use some therapeutic fibbing to explain the person's absence. If they're saying, I really miss them, I haven't seen them in a while, that might be a harder to discern kind of situation. And so you're going to try to seek more information. That's a really great opportunity, again, to use that questioning, like, oh, what made you think of them? Or, what are you hoping to do? Why did you want to see them? That sort of thing. So while I'm on the topic of therapeutic fibbing, I know I've spoken with some of you about this. I think that this is something that's very hard for those of us, really all of us, who consider ourselves to be honest people, and especially to tell a fib to our parents, our loved ones, feels wrong for a lot of us, deeply wrong in a lot of ways. We want to try to remember that if they are not able to remember and understand what we're telling them, there's a little bit of, imagine if you had to relive the loss of a significant person in your life for the first time, every day, and how horrible that would be. And so we want to try to look at it from that perspective. When we feel uncomfortable with the concept of fibbing to our loved one, we want to look at it from that perspective of, I'm saving them from this horrible experience. And so when we do that, we want to make sure that our therapeutic fibs are feasible. They have to be realistic. Okay, so you can't say, like, oh, they became an astronaut and now they're on the moon. That's, for most of us, that's not a real thing. Specific if possible. So the more you know about that person and about their relationship with that person, the more you're going to use that to your advantage. So say they're looking for their father, and their father was a businessman and he was always really busy. You might say, oh, he got stuck late at work, he's going to be home in about an hour. Use that information, and you want to make sure that your voice is sincere, and that your body language matches, your facial expressions match. That's a hard thing to do when we're telling a fib, so we really need to put on our acting skills. Something that happens in the brain with dementia is that as the brain loses some of its ability, it has this wonderful plasticity that helps it try to navigate new ways around those problems. And one of the major problems for a person with dementia, when they can't remember the new people coming in and out of their lives, is that they need to be really good judges of character so that they can make snap decisions on whether they trust a person. So for us, from a staffing perspective, if we're going in and trying to help them in the shower, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to let a total stranger into the shower with me. So our loved ones have to take that moment and and read our body language, read our facial cues, and decide whether or not this is a person I recognize, this is a person who I feel comfortable with. And so the flip side of that is that they get to be really good at reading people. So we have to sound sincere. We have to be a little bit of an actor or an actress to sell that fib so that they don't end up being more distressed when they realize that you're lying. Okay, so just something that we want to be aware of. So I do have here, so if you're not sure where your loved one is, whether they remember the person is gone or not, or how they're going to handle it, you can tell the truth. As a general guideline, we say, there's two different philosophies here. I'll give you both of them. You can choose which one feels right for you. So the first one is to tell the truth once. And then in that moment, so you've said, I'm sorry, I know you're looking for mom, but your mom passed away a few years ago. We want to allow for grieving. We want to answer questions and fill in details as much as possible. A lot of times when you do that, you're going to see either total disbelief and denial. Absolutely not. I saw her this morning. There's no way she's gone. You don't know what you're talking about. That's given you an insight into what's going on in their mind. That's a good time to backpedal. I'm so sorry. I must have gotten confused. I didn't mean to upset you. Tell me about mom. Maybe I can help you find her. And again, that's a way to transition from that distress of your loved one is passed to the positive experience of reminiscing, because now they're going to tell you about who they're missing, and you can hopefully help them with some happy memories that are going to help shift that mindset. If they say, I don't understand it, why wouldn't I remember that, which is also something that happens a lot, then you're going to lean into that and figure out, okay, what can I tell them? How do I help them through this? And you can say, you've been having a little bit of trouble with your memory yet, but you were there when she passed. You were there for the services, whatever to be true about the situation. Let them talk. Let them, if they have questions about what happened, go ahead and answer them. At that point, that's part of helping them grieve. And it might be uncomfortable and it might not be happy, but that doesn't mean it's not positive, because that emotion is still real in that moment, even if they don't remember it 20 minutes from now. The other philosophy is the rule of three. Okay. So we tell them once for them, once for ourselves, and then the third time we go to therapeutic fibbing. So you can choose what feels right for you. So when we say tell them once for them, it's exactly what I just said. We tell them once just as a way of checking where they are and making sure they have the information and helping them grieve if we're able and if we can. Once for ourselves is really about, often when we're talking with them about a loved one they've lost, it's a loved one of ours too. If they've lost a child, that's probably your brother or sister. If they've lost a parent, that's your grandparent. These are people that are important to you as well. And it might be hard for you to pretend as though that person is okay when they're not, especially if you had a close relationship with that person. So you can again choose to tell them the truth and go through that grieving process for yourself. And then for the third time, then we move on towards the therapeutic fibbing if they still don't remember. We definitely want to consider any underlying needs that might be contributing to those feelings of loss. So again, that what I said, like, why do you want your mom? Why do you want your dad? Why do you want that person? What does that person represent to you? And so we might think about, like I said, is the parent the one who cared for you when you didn't feel so good, when you were in pain, when you were hungry, when you were scared? Is your spouse your rock when you're stressed? Is that the person you go to for comfort? Is that the person that makes you feel loved and included, whatever the case may be. And then how do we meet that need? You know, maybe they really need a hug. Maybe they really need a Tylenol. You know, it could be anything in between. So we want to consider what underlying need might be fueling that line of questioning and meet it if we can. And of course, when we're working with reminiscing, we want to use open-ended questions, not specific questions with one right answer, because we want to give them as much opportunity to express themselves as possible and as much opportunity for success as possible. So we're going to stick with generic statements like, why don't you tell me about so-and-so? And if they give us a little bit of information, we're going to seek more with, so a general, you don't have to use this, but kind of a general jumping off point is like, yes, and this is really powerful. This and gives you an opportunity to fill in your own memories if you have any of that person, or it gives you an opportunity to ask another question to dig a little deeper into their memory and just help them express what they need to express, but also help you get a better understanding of not only where they are, but who this person was to them. Does all that make sense? Any questions or concerns about this? Okay. So then the second most common thing that I hear our residents talk about is home in terms of loss, especially in the middle and later stages of dementia. It is not uncommon to hear residents say, I want to go home. I've got to get out of here. This, you know, this isn't where I belong. Those sorts of statements. Sometimes that's because the home they're remembering in their head might be a home that's long since passed. So it's not uncommon for us to see people in the later stages of dementia believe they are younger than they are. They get very confused when they see recent pictures of themselves or when they see themselves in a mirror and they're like, that's not me. In their heads, often they're in their 20s or 30s. They might be thinking of the home they lived in their childhood or their, you know, their young adult ages. And that home isn't something that they've had for a while. The other thing that happens is that we want to consider, what does home mean? And so just like with the loss of a loved one, and what does that person mean to them? What does home mean? So this is a sense of security, a sense of safety, a place of ownership. This is the place where I can be myself and do what I want and nobody can tell me what to do. This is the place where I feel comfortable. This is the place where I get rest. And we want to ask ourselves, what does home mean to us? What does home mean to them? And figure out what's happening with that need for home. So we're going to use our empathy and our compassion. So in this one, I again use when they know. So sometimes, especially in the early stages of dementia, especially when people are first entering memory care, they know they've left their home. They may or may not know that they have memory troubles. They may or may not know that they need more help than they could get at home. But they know that they're not home anymore. We want to be compassionate to that. We want to understand that that's a real loss they do have to move through. If any of you have ever moved, bought a new home, there's a certain amount of excitement that goes with that. There's also a certain amount of sadness that goes with leaving the place where you left where you've lived your life up to then. It's reasonable for them to be uncomfortable or upset in these early stages when they know they've lost home. So we want to try to be patient with them as they move through that process. And we want to validate those emotions. So I think it can be tempting for us to try to rush them through because we want them to get to the place where they feel good again. like, yeah, it was a really nice home, but here's really nice too. And we kind of gloss over it. They need a little bit of time. And so it's okay to give them that space and to say, like, yeah, it is very hard. And that doesn't mean that things in the new home aren't good, but it's hard, and it's okay that it's hard. It's supposed to be. And respecting that they feel that way. We should expect a certain amount of anger or fear in these situations. Some people take it really well. Some people are even happy to go into care settings. But there's also a great many people that feel upset, not only at the loss of their independence, but at the feeling that things have been taken from them and that they didn't really have control over it. And if somebody moved you out of your home on what you perceive to be short notice and on what you perceive to be for not a very good reason, you'd be pretty angry too. And so we want to manage our response. So a good strategy for this, if you want to try it, is especially for those people whose loved ones might be either verbally aggressive or passive aggressive, where they'll make comments like, well, somebody made me move out of my house, like that sort of thing. You want to answer the question or respond to the statement, but ignore the tone, if that makes sense. So if they're saying, well, why did you do this to me? You're not going to respond back with, well, you couldn't handle living on your own. Not a good, that's only going to escalate the situation. It's going to take a bad situation and make it worse. So we want to answer the question, ignore the tone. So why did you move me here? Well, you were having a little bit of trouble at home and I was worried for your safety. And these are the reasons that we did it. Explain it from that perspective. It may or may not resolve their anger, but this is about giving them consistent messaging so that they can make peace with it. And it's also about you being able to respond and behave in a way that isn't going to alienate them from you in the long run, and that you're going to be able to live with. I know a lot of families have a lot of feelings when they do move their loved one into a care environment. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I need to be there more, or I should be able to care for them at home, or, whatever the case may be. And sometimes there's like a feeling of responsibility or a feeling of inadequacy or even a feeling of guilt that can come with that. If you respond to anger with anger, you're going to beat yourself up about it, because after the fact, you're going to calm down and recognize that they didn't mean it in the way that it came across, and you're going to feel guilty about your response. So this is also about helping you respond in a way that you can be more comfortable with in hindsight. Same with fear. This isn't really something that we talk about, and it's not necessarily like a completely accurate thing. But when we enter a care environment as a senior, in some ways we're moving into a new home. In some ways we're becoming homeless. So we're moving into an environment where, yes, it's our home, but it's also all these other people's home. And it's not the home that I built for myself, and it's not all the space that I had. And like, what's going to happen to me? And what if I can't afford this forever? And, what if they don't take care of me? And, what if I need something that they can't do? And there's a lot of fear that comes in that. And that's not to say that our loved ones with dementia are having those thoughts in exactly that way, but they do have a great deal of fear, especially when they first move in. They're waking up in a place that's unfamiliar. They're waking up to people that are unfamiliar. That's a good reason to be scared. So So we want to make sure that when we are experiencing that fear from our loved ones, that we're responding in a way that's compassionate and that's comforting and that's reassuring above all, so that we can help them make peace with that. We definitely want to bring personal items. I've seen a lot of families that think like they want to do something nice and their hearts are in the right place. They want to do something nice and they're moving mom or dad into this new location, and they want to get them a beautiful new bedroom set to make them, make them feel special. Are there times when that's appropriate? Sure, absolutely. There are no blanket statements in dementia. Every person is different. But for the most part, especially when a person is grieving the loss of home, that consistency in their personal belongings following them in can be a huge comfort. And that includes things like photos and jewelry boxes and knickknacks and small things, but it also includes the big stuff, their furniture. So if they've got, if they've spent every night of their life sleeping in the bedroom set that they bought when they were married, and this was their marital bed, they want to keep that bed. If you can fit it, if you can make it happen, do that. Bring as many personal touches, obviously space requirements and things like that, but bring as many personal touches as you can so that it feels as much like the home they're thinking of as possible. And assist with visits as possible. So this is also one of those situations that's different from person to person. Some families keep the family home for a long time. Some are ready to pass it on. Sometimes other family members move into the home, whatever the case may be. If your loved one is able to go out and able to be mobile and they're missing home, it's okay to take them. If the home is still in possession, of the family, if the home is still like they can still go in and navigate it safely, it's okay to take them to visit every now and then. If you had to sell the family home for whatever reason, it's okay to drive through the old neighborhood and give them an opportunity to reminisce and use that as a way to reminisce. That visual stimuli and things like that can be really helpful for supporting their memory. So they might remember things as you're driving through the neighborhood that they wouldn't have remembered just talking about it in their room or in whatever the care environment is. When they don't know. So this is for those loved ones who are in the later stages of dementia, maybe who've been in a care environment for a longer time. They may not know that the home has been sold. They may not know that they live here now. That's very common, that they think, oh, I came for the day, I'm supposed to go home, is a very common belief. So they may not know that they don't have a home to go to. Again, use that empathy. What does home mean? How do we figure out what it is they're looking for? I will say the vast majority of the time, in my experience, when someone is here and is looking for home, they are tired, they are in pain, or they are annoyed with their fellow residents. Just realistically, it's one of those, it's almost always one of those three things. Those are needs we can meet. So if our loved one is looking for home because they're tired and they're ready to take a break, we can take them to their room. We can find them a comfortable chair or help them get to bed and get the rest they need. If they're in pain, we can make sure that they have, whatever medicine they need. They have a heating pad, they prop their feet up, whatever the case may be, based on, what their pain is, where it is, and what it responds to. If they're annoyed with their fellow residents, it can be an overstimulating environment. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of personalities. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever had roommates, but it's not always a pleasant experience. And so we can make private spaces. So for those of us whose loved ones have private rooms, that's a great opportunity to say, like, let's go to your room and take a break. For those who share a room, this might be a time to go to a different spot. So, like in our healthcare environment, there's activity rooms, and they have some sections that are like a little more kind of off the beaten path than the main areas. That might be a place you go to sit with them and spend time with them, where it's a little less overstimulating, to give them a break from whatever it was that was annoying them, or whatever it was that was overstimulating them. Take them outside. That's a really great one. A lot of times they don't get as much fresh air as they would have in their own homes. They don't get as much out in the out in nature as they would have if they were still coming and going about their lives completely independently. So take them outside, get them some fresh air. That can be immensely comforting, kind of regardless of the situation. Sometimes fresh air is all we need to change our perspective. We definitely want to go on the journey with them. And so this is, again, part of that therapeutic fibbing. Again, it should be realistic, it should be specific if possible, and it should be sincere. So one of the things that I hear really frequently is, I've got to get out of here. My kids are going to be home from school soon, and I've got to be there to pick them up from the bus. So we're going to say, well, we knew you were here, so we arranged a babysitter to make sure that the kids are going to be safe. We might say, oh, your sister has the day off, and so she's taking the kids so that they can spend time with their cousins. Whatever the case may be, whatever seems like a specific, realistic situation, given what you know about the family history. I hear a lot, I took a bus trip here today, and I'm afraid I'm going to miss the bus to go home. Well, you're in luck. The bus stop is right at the corner, and the bus should be here in about an hour. Okay, we're using a timeline that's realistic. We're also using a timeline that's far enough away that they're not going to remember to try to go to the corner and get on the bus, if that makes sense. Sometimes I'll hear, like, where's my car? And so it's important to mention that other situations, other things that are either items of importance or items of independence for people can fall into this. So they might be looking for a car, not for home, things like that. You might say, oh, it's in the parking lot. That's where cars belong. They know they're in an unusual place. They know that it probably has a parking lot. That's a believable lie. So, again, and that encouraging reminiscence. So looking for home. Oh, really? Where's home? What does home look like? What's your favorite part about home? That's a great question. Maybe they tell you about how much they enjoyed their garden in the backyard. Maybe they tell you how much they enjoyed sitting at the window while they drank their morning coffee. Whatever the case may be, that gives you insight into things you can do to bring them comfort. So maybe the next time you come, you bring that cup of coffee and you sit by the window with them while you enjoy it. Maybe the next time you come, you bring them some plants and you get them outside and plant and plant some things. Or maybe you take them to the courtyard and you sit in the garden with them, stuff like that, so that it does feel more consistent with home. That's a great time for those yes and questions. And that's especially true if we're going on the journey. So if they're saying, I got to get home. Yeah. And what will you do when you get there? Oh, I've got to make dinner for be starving. They had baseball practice today. Great. Your kids play baseball? What, how did they get into that? How often do you go watch them? Things like that, where you're encouraging them to remember. It's doing two things. It's changing the focus off of I have to leave, and it's helping support them in remembering and helping you connect with them. Does this make sense? Any questions about any of this? Okay. So then, this is probably the next most frequent thing that I see is the loss of independence or the loss of livelihood. Um, a lot of our residents miss having jobs or think they still have jobs. A great many of them, I'm sure if you've been in visiting, you've probably noticed a great many of them believe that this is their job, and that's okay. But so the loss of independence is a big part of what happens as we progress in our dementia. But also just for seniors in general, retirement can be very challenging because so much of how we define ourselves is through what we've done with our lives. You know, when people ask you to talk about yourself, the first thing you say is, I'm Courtney and I work in memory care, you know. It's just so much of who we are. And so it can be very difficult for them after they've retired in general, and especially if they don't remember retiring. So that can be a big part of it. So when we're thinking about the loss of independence, we again want to use that empathy and remember that they really have lost a lot of control. They can't remember their own lives and their own responsibilities. They have moved out of their private homes. They've given up their vehicles and their ability to drive, their ability to come and go as they please. They're dependent on other people to bring them their meals, their medications, their necessities, their personal items, all of that. If they want to go visit a friend, they can't just pick up and do it. They've got to wait for that friend to come to them. There's a lot of loss of control in all of that. So we want to be patient and we want to be understanding, and we want to make opportunities for control and for choice when we can. So we want to give them as many of those opportunities as possible. So one of the things that we're going to do is adapt choices to where they are. In the early stages of dementia, you might be able to give them the world as a choice. What would you like to do today? And they can fill in that blank. In the later stages of dementia, and moderate and later stages, it might be harder for them to answer such an open-ended question. It might be harder for them to make a decision because that's one of the skills that tends to go first. So in those situations, we're going to limit it to 2 choices. Would you like to go out to lunch, or would you like to see a movie? Would you like to go to the park? Would you like to get some ice cream? Something like that. So we're going to give them 2 choices and let them choose from there. We might use visual cues. So say you're helping them get dressed. Again, that loss of control. I can't dress myself. That's very frustrating. Would you like to wear this, or would you like to wear this? And hold up those options. Especially in the moderate and later stages, that's going to be a much easier question for them to answer than something vague like, what would you like to wear today? Or even something that's more specific, but that might have some cognitive demands that they're not prepared to meet. So you might say, like, would you like to wear your red shirt or the blue shirt with the flowers on it? And in that moment, we're asking them to remember what their red shirt looks like and what their blue shirt with the flowers on it looks like, and to think about which one is more comfortable and which one they'd rather wear and which one matches the pants they've already put on. That's a lot of effort that we're asking for in that moment. Showing them those choices can be much simpler. And that's also true when we think about choosing food, choosing activities to do. Maybe you bring 2 activities. Would you like to crochet and you have the yarn? Would you like to color and you have the crayons? And so they have that visual cue. And then another strategy, and I don't know if any of you have young children, but for the record, this also works well with young children. We give them choices that will be successful regardless of what they choose. So just also helpful here. So I know hygiene is a topic we've talked about in the past. It's an area that a lot of us have struggled with our loved ones. So you're not going to say, do you want a shower? Because they're probably going to tell you no. You're going to give them a would you rather. Would you rather take a shower or take a bath? You haven't given them the option to say no. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't say no, but it does significantly decrease the chances, because the way the brain works through dementia is that it tends not to be, we don't have as much complex thought. So they're not thinking around the problem that you've presented them with. They're thinking, those are the two choices I have, I better pick one. So that can be a strategy that can help. We just make sure that none of the choices that they are presented with, regardless of the context, is going to be a bad choice. So you're not going to say, let's see. Would you like to go out to lunch or would you like to walk down the highway? Clearly that's a bad choice, and that's a terrible example, but I couldn't think of one in the moment. And so we want to make sure not do you want, but would you rather, and presenting options. With regard to the livelihood, we want to provide opportunities for helpfulness. I think in general, as we get older, people are more inclined to help us. As we see our loved ones get older, we are more inclined to help. We want to save them the effort. We want to save them the energy, and we want to be good, good children, good loved ones. So we're trying to ease the burden. They want that too. So give them opportunities to help. If they say, hey, I really, I appreciate you cooked, say you invite them over for family dinner and they say like, oh, this was so lovely. Please let me clean up. Now you might be thinking, there's no way, this is a lot of mess, but you're going to say that would be great. And then you're going to give them something that they can excel at. Maybe they're, walking the dishes from the table to the sink. Maybe you park them at the sink. If they struggle with mobility, maybe you take them to the sink and they just rinse dishes for you and you put them in the dishwasher. Maybe you sit down with them in their room and you fold a basket of clothes and you let them help fold clothes too. Opportunities to be helpful. And thank them. Be like it seems a little bit strange, but if they do anything for you, no matter how small, be grateful, even if it seems overly so, because they do often feel like they're not doing as much for other people as other people are doing for them. So if it's something like they say, oh, I'm so happy you came to visit today. Thank you so much. I had a really good time. It was really important to me to be with you today. And I appreciate you, taking time. I know you wanted to play bingo, but I appreciate you taking time to spend time with me. I really enjoyed it. Like, feel free to be over the top with your thanks because it helps them feel helpful. We want to provide opportunities for productivity. This is going to match their ability level. So again, if they're pretty able-bodied, let them help you with a task. Maybe they sweep the floor, maybe they fold some clothes, maybe, maybe they watch the kids for a little bit while you take care of something, whatever the case may be. If they're a little less able, we're going to scale that back. You might give them a seated activity, like folding laundry. You might give them an activity that's even made up depending on where they are. You might kind of manufacture an activity for them to feel productive. I know a lot of our ladies were caregivers, were homemakers, were housewives. They miss preparing meals. They miss setting the tables. They miss folding the laundry because that's how they defined their helpfulness and their productivity to their families. go ahead and let them set the table, or, let them fold towels. If you don't have any towels to be folded, unfold some towels and let them fold them again. Don't unfold them in front of them. They're not stupid. They'll catch on. So, like, oh, I could really use your help with this basket of laundry. And, maybe you just kind of go and clear the, the shelf into the laundry basket and take it to them, kind of a thing. In the later stages, we might use, like I said, manufactured opportunities, or things that are a little more simple, things that are sensory in nature. So this sounds really weird, but if you dump a box of spaghetti and a box of like elbow noodles into the same container, and you say, I don't know what I was thinking, and I mixed these together, can you help me separate them? Sorting is typically an activity that people, even in later stages of dementia, can do really well with. If you're a teacher, maybe you have them help you sort different colors of construction paper, and you bring in an assorted pack, and you help that, and they help you, put all the reds together, all the purples together, whatever the case may be. Maybe they wrap yarn, into a ball. Maybe they, maybe you bring some silverware and they help polish it. It can be anything. But just something that matches what their ability level is, but that still feels like an authentic, useful task. And again, that might depend on who they are and what they've done and where they are. So if we have a gentleman who was a contractor and he spent his entire life building, not that I'm necessarily going to put a saw and a hammer in his hand, but I might give him a sanding block and a piece of furniture, an old wooden chair. Hey, I'm looking to refinish this. Can you help me sand it? That's a job he can safely do. I wouldn't necessarily ask someone who taught preschool for 25 years to help me sand a chair, so we're going to kind of match it to who they are and what their skill set is. I know we've got a handful of residents that worked in finance, a few that worked for the county treasurer and things like that. We can give them math problems. You can find, Google receipts on the computer and print out bills, have them and give them to them. Things like that, so that they're taking on tasks that are consistent with the way they felt productive in life and the things that they wanted to do. We want to make those experiences authentic whenever we possibly can. So if it's a real thing, you take them home for a holiday dinner, that's a great opportunity to have them help set the table, clear the table, wash the dishes, whatever it might be. Like I said, if you're having them fold laundry, don't let them see you unfold the laundry. That makes the activity less authentic. Now they know you faked it for them. They may or may not remember that, but it may be upsetting to them. We want to avoid the dirty words. So the dirty words for a person with dementia are no, don't, can't, stop, those sorts of things. Again, they've lost a lot of control. Those are all words that further limit their control. So one of the major things we're going to do when we adjust our mindset is check ourselves, because our instinct when we want to protect our loved ones' well-being, our instinct is to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't. We can't go to the park because you can't walk as far as you used to. We can't, go out to dinner because you can't chew solid food anymore, whatever the case is. We want to change we can't to how can we safely. So whenever possible, we want to ask ourselves, if this is what my loved one wants, how can I safely make that happen? Maybe they can go to the park, but we need to bring a wheelchair for when they get tired. Or we start them in a wheelchair and we push them through the park. Maybe we can't go out to get steak if they're on a modified diet, but we can go out and get ice cream. How can I make a compromise that helps you feel like you've gotten what you want, but that also honors your need to protect your loved one and to keep them safe with the limitations that you know they have, even if they don't know they have them, if that makes sense. We call this turtle tactics. It's kind of a weird name, but the idea here is like, if you see a turtle in the road and you want to help it, a lot of people think, oh, I just got to get it to the closest side of the road. If you move it back to the side of the road it came from, it's going to keep walking into the road. It's going to keep putting itself in danger. If you move it the direction it's going to be out of danger quicker. We've helped it accomplish its goal, so it's not going to walk back into the road. People are the same way. If we help them accomplish their goal, they're going to be more comfortable and more at peace than if we're constantly setting them back. And especially for those of us who have loved ones in the moderate or later stages where impulsivity tends to be high and safety awareness tends to be low, they're going to try to do what they want to do regardless of whether or not you've supported them. So they might say, I want to get out of here. I want to go outside and get some air. And you're saying, no, we can't do that. It's, it's a long walk. It's too, it's too hot. It's too cold, whatever. The second you're not watching, they're going to get up and try to go. And they're going to do it in a way that's potentially unsupported. And that's even more dangerous than doing it with you. So if we can find a way to help them do what they want to do safely, do that. If you're not sure how to do that, that's what we're here for. So you can, reach out. We'll help you figure out a plan. You'd be surprised at the things we can accomplish with a little bit of creativity and a little bit of flexibility. If it's a situation where we absolutely cannot say yes, then we're going to frame our yes or frame our no as a yes. So maybe it's, maybe your loved one is totally immobile. Maybe it's very late stages and they've lost all of their mobility and they're still saying, I got to get out of here. I need some, I want to go sit outside. Yes. But first, let's get a snack. Yes, but first, your favorite show is coming on soon. Why don't we watch that and then we'll go out afterwards? Something to distract them from that want, but in a way where we've still acknowledged that that's what they want. So yes, we're going to do that, but first we're going to do this. And preferably that's an activity that they enjoy. It's something that's going to, absorb them and hold their attention for a few minutes so that they forget what that initial desire was. Does this make sense? Anybody have any questions or anything about this? Okay. All right. So then the last thing I want to talk about as far as losses for our residents, for our loved ones is concerned, is perceived loss. So this is kind of a weird thing. These are losses that are not necessarily grounded in reality. And that could look like any number of things. So, what you determine to be a perceived loss is going to depend on your loved one and what they're saying to you. So we have to be good listeners when this happens. So some of the things that I hear frequently from residents is like, you're not my son. My son is 11, or you're not my daughter. My daughter is, 11. My kids are little. You're an adult. So you can't be my child. As that child, like for you, that is an incredibly hurtful moment. There is a little bit, no matter how understanding we are, no matter how compassionate we are, no matter how educated we are about the process of dementia, there is always that part of us inside that's like, my mom doesn't know who I am, or my dad doesn't know who I am. And that is terrifying. This is a time where we need to remember It's not that they don't know that you're their child. It's that they're at a different point in time in their head and they're remembering you differently. So they know they have a child. They're looking for them, you know? They just don't realize that you're a full grown adult. So that's one I see really frequently. And so then they're looking for their children. Where are my children? You know, who's with them? I need to be the one taking care of them. We're going to go with that journey. There's a babysitter. They're staying with grandma, whatever the case may be. Sometimes we'll hear, especially for those of our loved ones that have anxiety, we'll hear kind of vague perceived loss. I just know something terrible has happened. Why won't you tell me what's wrong? I just know something's wrong. In that moment, you're going to do your best to try to reassure them that things are taken care of. And if you can get information about them or from them about what they think is wrong, you can use that to your advantage. So when I've had this happen in the past with residents, sometimes it's partially based in reality. So they might be reliving an old memory, but just like blurry on the details. So I know something has happened. I'm afraid my brother's in danger. And really their brother had a car accident, but it was 20 years ago. That might be where they are, you know, that sort of thing. So if you have that information, you want to make sure that you're keeping it in mind. And then the other thing that I often see is, so confabulation is a very fancy word that basically means that your brain fills in the gaps. So when we have uncertainty, our brain makes logical conclusions about what we think is happening. That is true across the board for all of us. Anyone with a brain, sometimes you jump to conclusions. Sometimes your brain fills in the gaps. And sometimes we're right, but sometimes we're not. For a person with dementia, this tends to happen far more frequently. It tends to be far more distressing in nature. So the things that I hear most often are that something has been stolen or that something terrible has happened. Something, somebody treated me poorly, somebody did something horrible, that sort of thing. When that's what's going on, we're going to tailor our response to that. So how we do that, regardless of what the perceived loss is, we accept the reality we're given and go with the flow. Okay. So whatever they perceive to be what's real, that's what's real in that moment. So if they're saying, my son is a little boy, you can't possibly be my son. Okay. So now you're somebody else and you've got to adopt that role. Maybe you're the son's teacher and you know that he's safely in class. Maybe you're, what frequently happens is that they believe you're their parent because now you're the person caring for them. And that's what parents do. And they believe they're much younger, you know? So, you know, they might call you mom, they might call you dad. Go with that. Often that language means you're the woman or you're the man that loves me and takes care of me. So even if the term isn't exactly right, that's how they think of you. And that's still a nice way to be thought of, you know, so it can be a little bit, like a little bit jarring the first time it happens, but just know that they still think of you as a loving person. They know that they love you and that you love them. They're just thinking about it in a different way. So go with that. Whoever they perceive you to be, go with that flow. If they're saying something terrible has happened and it's a vague something, okay, can you tell me more? What do you feel? What do you think is going on? Again, those open-ended questions to give them an opportunity to explore what they're feeling and express what they can, so that you can meet whatever need is contributing to that. This is usually happening Again, for our people with anxiety, it can be that they're uncomfortable, they're in pain, they're hungry. Those tend to drive this. It can be that they saw something upsetting. Maybe they were watching the news. I'll tell you, the news is not great for a lot of our loved ones with dementia because they can't cognitively understand it, but they recognize that the tone of it is overwhelmingly negative. And so it tends to make their anxiety worse. It tends to make their depression worse, their anger worse. If our loved ones watch a lot of the news, we can typically expect them to be more distressed more frequently. So that might be what's going on. And so if that's the case, maybe you go back to that, that thing we talked about at the beginning. If there's something bad going on in the news and they were watching it, maybe you talk about it once, answer their questions, address their feelings about it, and then move on. So regardless, we want to accept the reality we're given and we want to go on the journey. You want to use available resources and supports. What that means might change from day to day. Okay. So if your loved one believes that something has been stolen, then you might say, I'm going to call the police and file a police report. And then you're going to pick up the phone and have a pretend phone call where you report the item stolen. If they want to make the police report, maybe you call a family member, a friend that you trust. Maybe you call one of us. I know that I've had that happen where I've suddenly got to play a role. You call and say, hello, is this the police? My mom says that her necklace has been stolen. Can you help us? And then you put her on the phone and I'm going to say, hello, this is Officer Morrison, whatever the case may be, and play along. It's awesome if you have people in your corner that can do that. Use those supports. It might be an item they need. Maybe you're helping them find whatever they believe was stolen. We're going to, again, encourage reminiscence through questioning. If they're confused about their children, if they're feeling like something terrible has happened, those open-ended questions can help us figure out how we best respond to them and can help us identify what's going on that made them think of that. It can also help shift them from that place of confusion and loss to a place of positively remembering things. And we also want to consider past events and traumatic experiences and know that it might not be a direct parallel. So I used to have a resident who would sometimes say this, something terrible has happened. My parents are dead. I just know it. Now, she's right. At the point that she was in her 90s, her parents were long since passed. But to my knowledge, her parents died peaceful deaths of old age, had good lives, all of that. But she was convinced that something traumatic had happened. And through some investigation, we found out that her brother had passed in a car accident and that her parents had died of natural causes, and her memory was mashing those two experiences together. So she knew there was a car accident where life was lost, and she knew her parents were gone. And so she was reliving it as though her parents had died in a car crash, which is a much sadder and scarier thing than your loved ones passing peacefully of old age. So once we knew where that fear was coming from, it was easier for us to understand where she was and to offer her comfort. So if your loved ones have any traumatic experiences in their past, we always want to kind of keep that in the back of our mind when we're trying to figure out why it is that they're distressed. And that's going to help us temper our response. And it's important to know that trauma may not only be loss. Trauma might be it might be classic examples of trauma. Maybe they served in, maybe they served in the military and they were in active duty and they saw war. Maybe they had significant losses. Maybe they themselves were in a car accident. Maybe it's maybe it's a pet that passed away. Maybe they were abused as a child. Maybe, like it could be anything, depending on the person. Something that might seem minor to someone else can seem pretty major to them. If they met their husband at a particular restaurant and that restaurant closes down, that might be a traumatic event for them because it was such a significant place. And to anybody else, it's like restaurants close all the time. Why is that a big deal? But to them, that's a formative experience, so it can kind of be all over the map. So we want to try to keep any trauma that they've experienced in the forefront of our mind when we have these kind of ambiguous senses of loss and we're not sure what to do. It might help us figure out what's going on. We want to validate their emotions and go on a fact-finding mission. We can do both. So this is especially true for that confabulation piece. I often hear somebody stole my clothes, my shoes, my jewelry, whatever the case may be. Often what happens for our loved ones with dementia is that they think this is valuable and this is important and I should put it in a safe place. So they hide it. And then because of the nature of dementia, they forget where they've hidden it. They forget that they've hidden it. And so now this thing that's valuable and important is missing. And the only way it could be missing is if it was stolen. So that's a time when we're going to validate their experience. Oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I can't believe that happened. Who would do such a terrible thing? Validate their emotions. They're upset that they perceive that something has been stolen. But also go fact finding. So this might mean while they're in the bathroom, you're searching the room to try to find where they've put that. This might mean if your loved one is in a care setting like here, this might mean you're going to talk to staff and see what really happened here. Whatever the case may be. And we're going to try to figure it out. And we want to figure it out without them present whenever possible. Because if we're validating their emotions and saying, yes, it's a horrible thing that this was stolen, or it's a horrible thing that that person didn't bring you, the cup of tea they promised, or, whatever the case may be. And then we're saying, I know that didn't really happen. What's really going on here right in front of them? I think it's pretty clear that that's not a good, not a good thing to do. How would you feel if you went into, say, a store and you expressed upset with poor customer service and they were like, yeah, so sorry it happened to you, and then they looked at the person who treated you poorly and were like, this person sucks and you were fine? That would be infuriating. So whenever possible, we want to do that fact finding without our loved one present and then revisit. In these situations, we want to avoid the dirty words. The dirty words are different for these. So I don't know about you, but I know that for me and for a great many people I've talked to about this, that when we are angry or when we are upset and someone tells us to calm down, that's probably like pouring gasoline on a fire. It's going to make it much worse. If you're angry and someone says, don't, just calm down, it's very invalidating, it's very upsetting, and it's very dismissive. And for people who've already lost a lot, it's really upsetting. So we don't want to tell them, don't worry. We don't want to tell them, calm down. If you have a real problem, and again, what you perceive to be a real problem, somebody stole my wedding ring, that's a real problem, even if the wedding ring wasn't really stolen. Telling somebody to calm down doesn't bring the ring back, doesn't fix what they perceive the problem to be. So it's a good way to pour fuel on the fire. So we want to avoid those words. We instead want to lean in again to that validation. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. How can I help? What can I do? Can I help you look for it? Can I call the police? Can I, whatever, depending on the situation. We want to focus on the emotion behind the loss. So if they're angry, we're going to be angry with them, and we're going to help them do something to calm down the anger. That might be letting them vent and then changing the topic. If they're sad, we're going to take a different approach. We're going to be more reassuring. We're going to talk in softer tones. We're going to kind of adapt our approach. So focus on the emotion behind what they're saying and let that guide you. And then for yourself, because it can be a very challenging experience, try to find the humor in it. This is a good practice in general with regard to dementia. There are a lot of very stressful challenges in dealing with your loved one with dementia. I say that both as a professional and as a person who has dealt with this in my own family. Both of my grandmothers and my great grandmother all had dementia. I've been there with all of them through that. It's hard, and it's a very different kind of hard than it is to work with people professionally, because it's so much more personal. It's so much closer to home. And so it can be very challenging. For yourself, try to find the humor in the situation. Try to find, the absurdity of it. Like, I had to pretend that I was calling the police. It was ridiculous. I put on my best, I don't know, pick an actor you like, I had to do my best impression of this actor and really try to sell this kind of a thing. Try to laugh it off when you can. It's going to help you stay sane. So, any questions, comments about any of this?
No.
No? Okay. All right. And so then my last point, and this is really more about for you and your experience, caregiver loss. So, as I mentioned, I've been through this in my own family, so I know how hard it is to watch your loved one change through dementia. Some people handle it really well and are able to roll with it. Some people, it's a very long grieving process, and it's really, there's no right or wrong to it. In many ways, we're losing our loved one a piece at a time, and that can be very disheartening. It can be very sad. It can be very distressing. So, and really what's happening too is that we're losing our loved one a piece at a time, and we're also becoming increasingly responsible for them with every piece they lose. So we're grieving more and more, and we also have more and more responsibility, which is not a great combination, just from a stress management level. So for your own sake, if you're feeling this way, please acknowledge that your experience is real and valid and immensely challenging. There is no other experience on earth like caring for a loved one with dementia. There's just nothing else like it. And it is hard, and it is difficult in a lot of different ways. So just know that the challenges that you face are real, and that it's normal, and it's okay that you feel the way you do sometimes. And those feelings might change from day to day. You might be that person that's okay with it and at peace with it 90% of the time, but every once in a while you have a hard day. It's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're doing some disservice to your parents. It means you're human and you're going through something difficult, and that's okay. Set healthy boundaries. It is okay to take a break if you need to take a break. If you have siblings that can help you share the responsibility, if you have family, friends that can help you share the responsibility, awesome. Lean into that. Use those supports. If you come in and your loved one is particularly agitated that day and it's just hard for you to be there, it's okay to cut that visit short. It's okay for you to say, I'm only going to come on these days. It's okay for you to make modifications based on how you're feeling or what's going on in your life at any particular time. That's why you've brought them to a care setting. Even if you're caring for them at home, you can still set those boundaries. Maybe you need to set aside a day or a time of day that's just for you to decompress. That's okay. You're not less loving to your loved one by doing that. You're actually giving them the better version of yourself and giving them more love if you take the time to protect your own needs. Okay. I think if we all are honest with ourselves, we know that when we are upset, when we are angry, when we are distressed, we are not our best selves. We tend to snap, we tend to lash out, we tend to make mistakes, and then beat ourselves up about those things later. Better to take the pause, set the boundary, take care of yourself, and come back fresh and have a better experience with your loved one because of it. It's going to be more valuable for you. It's going to be more valuable for them. That might feel weird at first, but it is so important. We want to build a diverse social support network. Okay. So when I say that, I mean that you need people that know dementia and that are going through what you're going through. Maybe that's your brothers and sisters. Maybe that's friends who also have aging parents. Maybe that's professionals, whatever the case may be. You also need people that will just let you not think about it. You need people that you can just go out and have a good time with and not have to worry about what's going on with mom, what's going on with dad in the back of your head. You need time to decompress. You need people that can help take your mind off of those things. You need people that are occasionally willing to pick up the burden. I just can't do it today. Can you? Or that are willing to pick up other burdens. Hey, I've got to go be with mom today. Can you pick up my groceries for me? And give them a list, whatever the case may be. So build your support network. Please, please include us in your support network. Whether you have a loved one here in Tapestries with me or in another part of the building, in your home, and you're just thinking about it. Maybe this video was passed on to you by someone, whatever the case may be, reach out. That's what we're here for. This is what I do, and this is what I love to do. And the helping is a big part of what I love. So feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help in whatever way I can. And I've got a whole team here that is also just as happy to help out in whatever way we can. So please consider us part of that support network, whether or not your loved one is here. Make moments count. This is a harder thing to do some days than others, but anytime we spend with our loved one, we want to try to make it the best possible moment it can be. We want to pay attention to the good in that moment. So if our loved one is pleasantly confused, they're in the early stages and they just, they keep asking the same question over and over again, feel free to have a little fun with that. Feel free to pay attention to the fact, if they've asked me how my kids are doing 15 times in the last 15 minutes, it means they really care about my kids. That's a good thing. Make that moment count. Tell them all about your kids' lives. Go into a lot of detail. They won't remember it necessarily, but in that moment, it's going to make their day. Go for it. Even if they're in distress, offer them that comfort. Try to do something to cheer them up or to make them feel comforted or to help them solve whatever the problem is. That's a moment and a memory for you to cherish, even if they won't. So do your best to make mindfulness, or to make each moment count, and use mindfulness. One of the things that I always say is that they are masters of mindfulness, especially the more they progress in their dementia, the less they worry about the past and about the future. They're really only living for that time right then. And And so if we can address what's going on in that moment and make that moment good, then their entire life is good in that instance. And we can do that for ourselves too. So try not to get bogged down in the feeling of who mom or dad used to be. Try not to get bogged down into the worry about who mom or dad is going to become next. Try to hold on to who they are right now and what's valuable about them right now and what's beautiful about them and where they are right now. There are things that are beautiful and wonderful and lovely and fun and, all of that good stuff about them, regardless of where they are in their journey. We just might have to work a little harder to find it. And we do that for ourselves. Okay. Flip your thinking. This is a big one. What is the good behind the apparent bad? This is especially true for those of you who have loved ones in the early and moderate stages of dementia, moderate especially, where they may not remember that they have the struggles. They may be a little more argumentative. They may be a little more resistant to what you have to say or to what you're trying to do with them, for them, whatever the case may be. I know a lot of my families take a lot of verbal abuse. Just realistically, I know that's true. Try to find the good in that. And so what I mean by that is, if you're the person that mom is unloading all her frustration on, it's because she trusts that you're not going to hurt her. You're not going to go and yell at somebody that you think might punch you in the face. You're not going to be rude or nasty to somebody that you think is going to love you less or treat you more poorly because of that behavior. So if your loved one is angry, if they're agitated, if they're argumentative, just know that they're doing that with you. Feel safe to do that with you. They trust you. They trust that you're going to love them anyway. They trust that you're going to handle whatever the problem they're expressing is. They know they can count on you to be there and maybe to fix it. That's the good and the bad. Okay. If they are really, really forgetful, really struggling with their memory, what's the good in that bad? They're enjoying this time, and this is a time for you to share memories with them and to give back to them in that way. That's a great thing. They're really repetitive. What's the good in that? This is an opportunity for you to dig for details. Maybe every time they remember a situation, they say something different about it. Soak up all those details, because those are going to be the stories you pass on someday. Or those are going to be the stories that you look back on, and feel positive about later. Use that for pretty much anything. This is just true of life. There is nothing that is all good. There is nothing that is all bad. So we just have to kind of put on our detective hat and find the good in the hard thing that we're dealing with that's right in front of us. And by all means, if you need to, have a cry. If you need to, have a laugh. Use your humor when you're able to. It's a great way to cope with some really difficult things. And when you can't cope with really difficult things with humor anymore, it's okay to sit down and have a good cry, or sit down and have a good rant and get it out of your system. We don't do anything for no reason. So I know some of us are not used to expressing our emotions in that way and being okay with it. Some of us know the value of a really good cry. You can get it out and then you feel like a new person an hour later. Maybe you've got a headache from the tears, but you feel better afterwards because you vented it. Great. Lean into that. What works for you, do it. if you are the person who has always thought that crying or ranting or whatever was, maybe undesirable in some way, then know that physiologically, like just the way that our bodies work, when you cry, it reduces your brain temperature. And that produces a calming effect. So I don't know if you've ever noticed that people tend to be crankier when they're hot. This is kind of a real living embodiment of that. When we are overheated, we tend to be more emotional. We tend to be more emotionally unstable and more reactive. Crying actually cools our brain temperature down and can help us feel calmer. So even if you're not the person who's like typically very emotional, just know that there's still a benefit to it, just by the basis of that's how bodies work. So go ahead and give into it now and then. Any questions, comments about any of this?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank all of you for joining me today. And I want to thank anybody who happens to watch in the next few days over the recording. If you have any questions that come up after the fact, you can reach out, call, email, whatever you want to do. I'm happy to answer them. I will send out the recording and the slides as soon as they're available, which typically takes usually about a half an hour or so after the presentation. So I'll get it out to you tomorrow so that you can have it to look back on to share, whatever the case may be. Does anybody have any suggestions for future topics you'd like us to address?
I had one.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can. Go for it.
It's it was a problem for a while, and now it's not as much, but I expect it to come back. She gets upset when we're leaving, when we're going to leave her. And I try to leave her at the lunch table. And that seems to work, but I'm not sure it's the right thing.
Okay. Okay. So when you say you're not sure it's the right thing, what makes you think that?
I guess I feel guilty.
Okay.
That it's putting her in a situation where she can't give me a hard time. You know what I mean?
Okay.
She's at a table.
So that's fair.
But she has also said more than once, so I guess you're going to take me to lunch and leave me like you always do. Oh, stab me with a knife,
Oh.
So she's on to it, which is interesting.
So that might be one of those situations where like I said early on, we ignore the challenge and just address the need. Yes, unfortunately, I do have some other things I need to do today, so I am going to take you to lunch and then head out.
That's what I do.
Ignore the challenge. Yeah.
That's what I do.
Ignore the challenge, answer the question. But we can also be really reassuring. This is when I'm going to come back. This is, you know how to contact me if you need me before then. So, and if she's not in a position where she can do that independently, then, let the, if you miss me before I come back, I'll be back tomorrow. But if you're missing me before then, let them know and they can help you call me.
Oh, okay.
Or I'll call you later on tonight and see how your day went, kind of a thing. So that can be helpful. But that's certainly something, you're not the first person to address that. So that's certainly something I can add to my list of topics.
Okay. And thank you very much. You're a wealth of information, and your personal experience, really, you can see it in your eyes that you've lived this. And it's very much appreciated.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm happy to help. So before everybody leaves, I had two topics. I'm not sure who would prefer what. So since you're here, you get to weigh in. So one of the topics that a family had previously asked me to cover was how do we help our loved ones with when they experience anxiety or even paranoia as part of their dementia. Just for the record, we're going to address both of these topics, so there's no wrong answer. It's not like if you say no to that one, I'm gonna ditch it. So I just mean in terms of what we talk about next month. So we can talk about how to deal with anxiety and paranoia for our loved ones. The other thing that I was thinking of as a topic, so dementia can have a genetic component. And I know that for my own family, we have a significant family history of dementia. And so we often, when we're forgetful, we're like, oh no, is it happening? You know? So when I say, so what is normal? We can also have a discussion about what normal forgetfulness is and when you should be concerned that you might be experiencing dementia, just to help relieve your own anxiety if you are the type of person who, like my mom, for example, is like, oh my gosh, is it happening to me already? Kind of a thing. So anybody have a preference for which topic we do next?
What is normal? That's the one I would pick first.
Linda, it looks like you're talking, but I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I put my thing up. I apologize.
That's okay.
If I had to choose between the two to have first, I would say what is normal.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have a have a preference? Oh, all right. So next month, I haven't picked a date yet, but I will send out an email. I'll likely choose a date tomorrow. So when I send out the recording and the slides, I'll let you know what the date for next month is going to be. So next month, we'll talk about what's normal forgetfulness with aging, and when should you be concerned that it's more than that. Just so that you can kind of relieve your own feelings of worry. And it's also just helpful, you know, a lot of us have big families, and so you might have other people that you're kind of wondering, you know, am I going to need to take care of them soon too? So just to give you a little bit of what you're looking for. And then the anxiety and paranoia will likely be the month after that, unless there's some pressing need to change gears, just because that is a topic that was requested already. So, okay, thank you all so much. Have a good night. And
Thank you very much, Courtney, for all the information. It's very helpful.
oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Yes, take care. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.